Hello and welcome. It's so good to be here with you all today. For those of you who I haven't had the chance to meet yet, my name is Joy. I use she, her pronouns. I serve as the Director of Programs here at Youth Collaboratory. I work closely with Building Community, which houses the Mentoring Plus program, and also Liberation Team, which houses our exploitation and trafficking and anti-trafficking work. So it feels really good to be in community. I know this is the home stretch for many of us of the year where we're kind of racing towards that December finish line, or maybe sauntering if we're so lucky. So thank you for taking the time to be with us and be in community with your fellow partners today. We're really excited for the time that we get to spend together. So I'm also going to be joined by the rest of the team who I cannot wait to share. We do have some updates to the team, but before we get into that, just want to let you know that we are going to be talking today a bit about the updates, where we are as a cohort, knowing that our individual work and our community work that we're doing feeds out into the work of the cohort. So we'll talk a little bit about where the cohort is and how we're doing as a whole. And then we'll spend some time on ongoing mentoring training, and we'll talk about next steps. But as I mentioned, and I know I may have been speaking with each of you individually or some of you, that we are expanding our team, and we have expanded our team here at Youth Collaboratory, and we have a new member of the Building Community and Mentoring Plus staff team, and that is Leslie Rich. And some of you may recognize Leslie from her work. So I will actually let Leslie introduce herself, but just want to pause and welcome Leslie Rich to the Building Community and Mentoring Plus family.
Thanks so much, Joy. Yes, I am thrilled to join the team. As Joy said, my name is Leslie. I use she, her pronouns. I am located in Tucson, Arizona, where it is lovely and sunny. So sending everyone sunshine who has real fall where they live. I come from Big Brothers Big Sisters here in Southern Arizona, where I was the chief operating officer, and we were a part of the M+19 funding, which is where I learned the amazing things that Youth Collaboratory has been doing and the enhancements that are just making our mentoring program so much stronger and really creating that strong communities in all of our areas. So I'm really excited to get to meet those of you I have not got to meet yet and continue to work alongside you all.
Awesome. Thank you, Leslie. We so appreciate your being here to and add your wisdom and expertise of mentoring and your approach. And we're so excited. I know some of you who are with affiliates are probably also excited that there is someone here on the team who has awareness of the different hoops that you have to jump through in terms of M+ implementation. And it's something that we're wanting to learn more about in terms of what that experience is like for folks who are doing mentoring in different types of organizations. So thank you, Leslie, for coming in and sharing your expertise, even beyond Big Brothers Big Sisters, but just your approach to mentoring and working collaboratively with the team. We are so excited for the work we'll get to do together. So we're going to dig into how we're doing as a cohort. And all of that soon. But the first thing that I think would be good for us to do is for us to check in on how we are doing with each other. So normally we would ask for a chat icebreaker, and I am all things chat icebreaker, and I have asked all the pumpkin questions. As if you all don't know, I am up to 6 pumpkins right now. Trader Joe's bumped me up when they started selling bouquets of little baby pumpkins. They are actually, they say it's a pumpkin tree. I don't think that they are real pumpkins. They look like persimmons, but in my mind, there's a pumpkin tree in my living room in a vase. And so that it brings me comfort. I am one of the pumpkin kids, for real. But instead of doing that kind of chat icebreaker, I'm hopeful that we can connect with each other and that you all can check in with each other and let each other know how you're doing. So we're going to do something different and go into breakout rooms, small random breakout rooms. And the question is, if you could share whatever you'd like, your name, your pronouns, your location, but also what is something that feels smooth lately? Some of us have a tendency, myself especially, to be like, oh, this is a challenge that is happening in my day and these are my plans. But feel free to share something that's going well. It could be that you found a pumpkin bouquet at Trader Joe's, or it could be that you had a wonderful match engagement session, whatever feels good to you. So we'll be in there for a short amount of time. And feel free to turn your cameras on and engage with the folks in your room. Welcome back. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about program updates, and then we'll get into the conversation for today, which is ongoing mentor training. So how are we doing? First of all, we're doing great because we're still going, and it has been a season. Like I said, we're in the final stretch of this year, and I know that it has not been an easy time as we transition away from what was the high pandemic into what is now the normalized everyday pandemic of it all. But we know that still that community comfortability with mentoring, we're still easing into that things are not 100%. So we want to just let you know that we see the work that you're doing and appreciate all of your efforts. And again, thank you for being here today. The goal of sharing the program updates is not to necessarily point out what we're not doing well, but to look at what we are doing well and where we can do better to optimize the outcomes for the communities that we are working in, and also for our overall grant implementation. So we know that traditionally December is the time that we would stop matching. But for many of you, we have started to have the conversations about extending the match period. And we will continue to have those conversations and look at what makes sense, what feels like a realistic goal for you all, and how do we get there? How can we at Youth Collaboratory help you get there? And how can we connect you with your peers as a resource to help you all get to the goals? So where we are now, so we have an overall, we're at about 53% of our match goal, which is actually pretty good, all things considered. So we definitely still have a ways to go, but the good news is that based on what we've seen in the conversations that we have the capacity to make our match goal at the end of the grant period. With a few adjustments and shifts. So I offer that to say to continue the work that you're doing in your communities, and also know that there is an opportunity for us to continue matching into the next year. And so it would be also a good time to start to think about what momentum and actions can we take as we prepare for the next year. Many of us have started, if we've not already planned out what January is going to look like, the National Mentoring Summit, it being National Mentoring Month. It's a great time now to start preparing for how we get our numbers up in January. But good work on the match goals now, continue to get those in, and please be sure to add those matches as soon as you are able to IMS, because that is how we get to see the work that is happening. The next thing that we are going to talk about is mentor training. You all are doing really, really well with pre-match training. So 83%, based on what's in IMS, 83% of the mentors are attending, completing, and demonstrating knowledge, all of those things in pre-match mentor training. I want to give a couple of shout outs for pre-match training for the programs who are in the high 90s. A shout out to Flint and Genesee at 97% of their matches their mentors are completing pre-match training, and Big Brothers Big Sisters of Connecticut at 98%. Right there with you all is Big Brothers Big Sisters of the Low Country at 92%. And so this is, you all are doing an amazing job. All of you all are doing pre-match training. Awesome. And some of you all are really excelling at it. One of the things that we've noticed is that some of you all have started to really connect with one another. And I think that's a beautiful thing. That really is the beauty of being in M+, is that you are connected to folks in other communities who have the same goals, but may have different processes. And so one of the reasons why we share and give kudos and highlights to the programs who are excelling in these different areas. And so there's things that we can tell you as training and capacity building managers and support, but then there are things that you can learn directly from your peers. And we want to be sure that you know who you can reach out to and who can be a support to you in this work. So if we look to the right of pre-match training, we've got ongoing training. And ongoing training, we definitely have some opportunities for growth. That's what I would like to refer to as our growing edge. We're currently at about 33% of our mentors are receiving ongoing training. And this is a catalyst for why we chose the topic today, because it's not uncommon. It's actually quite common in the mentoring field and youth services field that a lot of the emphasis historically has been on pre-match training, that we're all aligned on talking about safety and ensuring that folks know what the expectations are in establishing relationships before someone is matched with a mentee. And then sometimes what happens is that, it kind of trails off after the match is made. We've established that they're a safe person, they're showing up, they're doing the thing, and we may start to focus on other things. And I can imagine that there's quite a bit to do outside of mentor training. But we're hoping in our M+ implementation, because we've seen the evidence but some of those numbers are not being reported in IMS. So this is another reminder to please add those trainings into IMS so that we can see it and we can add the information and make this fancy chart and all that to reflect back to you the work that you are doing. And the final section that we want to talk about in terms of program updates today is around the family engagement and community resources. And this is another one of those areas where you all are doing an amazing job of sharing information about resources. I happen to also know that you are connecting families, youth, stakeholders to resources. That mentoring programs have become a hub of resources for their communities, especially over this last couple of years. The thing that we are hoping for is that you're sure to add this information into IMS. So right now we're at 43% of programs have been able to increase knowledge of resources with families, which means you're telling them about different things that may be helpful to them. And it could be in your newsletter that you're telling them these things. It could be in your match support calls when you're reaching out to parents and talking to young people and asking what the needs are, and you're telling them about resources. But what we're seeing though is that right now, even though 43% of people are being told about resources that's in IMS, in IMS, it shows that only 9% of people are accessing those resources, which I also don't think is true. I think that there's quite a few people who are accessing the resources that you all are so lovingly sharing with folks, but that it's not showing up in IMS. And so this is another thing that I think we can couch into mentor development and check-ins and family check-ins is how are you accessing resources? And resources you can include mentors in those resources and sharing of resources as well. So just a couple of reminders about how we're collecting the information and using data to share the story about the work that you all are doing. Because I know that you all are doing it and we want to be able to reflect that work up and out to OJJDP. And we want to know about it just so we can thank you and be aware of all the good that's happening as a result of programs in the communities. I'm going to pause there and ask if there are any questions about the program updates and material that's been covered so far. Okay. Well, if you have any questions about IMS entry, about adding resources or adding ongoing training in IMS, feel free to reach out to myself or any of the other team members about it as they come up. And I'm going to pass it to Emily to take us into this next portion.
Thanks, Joy. And I live in southern Vermont, so I live deep in autumn country. This is where the whole country comes to celebrate autumn. And I don't have any pumpkins or fall beverages because I just live it and breathe it every moment that I go. And I wish I could show you all the incredibly colorful view out my window today. So ongoing mentor training. I will be honest, I am really a terrible trainee. I hate webinars. I don't like being talked at inside my computer. At trainings when I go to them, if I don't have opportunities for interaction pretty regularly, I get very grouchy and put terrible evaluations in my evaluation forms. And so that's usually the perspective that I come to all of this creation with, which I hope serves you all well, but sometimes might lead to what we're going to do today, which I'm calling participation by overstimulation. So in order to bring all of our voices into the room today, and especially those of you who like to keep your cameras off or the sort of unmute, jump into the room thing is still awkward, we are going to do a parallel process. And so we're going to use a software called Padlet. I guess it's an app called Padlet, or I don't know what the difference between software and an app is, but we're going to use something called Padlet, and it's a great sort of like brainstorming whiteboard space. And so you have the link to that in the chat. And so I'd like everyone to click on that and click through. And so what we're going to do is while everyone's in Padlet, throughout the rest of our time today, almost every slide, every other slide, there's going to be a prompt for a conversation. We would like it if every single one of you at every single one of those opportunities either participate in the Padlet or participate in the chat or participate with your mouth. Probably skipping the chat's the best idea, but if that's like your go-to, then keep on doing it. But we'd really prefer you're in the Padlet if you're a person that likes to type and talk. And if you're a person who likes to talk with your mouth, like me, then you can unmute or raise your hand and join the conversation. So we're going to really have like a lot of parallel process, parallel play today. So I'm in the Padlet. Are you in the Padlet? Thanks, Jen. Is anyone having any trouble accessing the Padlet? Love the thumbs up, thank you. Okay, hearing no troubles. Lots of thumbs up, I love it, thank you everyone. Gosh, Zoom is so endlessly peculiar and we're continuing to work through it all these years later. So everyone's in the Padlet, this is great. We're all here in the Zoom together, also great. Some of us have our cameras off, some of us don't. I can't see anyone because I'm looking at the Zoom screen with the PowerPoint. So we're going to go to the next slide and I'm going to ask a question and we're going to try to talk about it in the parallel process. So, and I seem to not even see that question on there. So first question is basically, why do mentor training?
And I'm adding it right now.
Oh, no, now I get it. Nope. Benita's got it. She's smarter than I am about my own intentions. So why do we do mentor training? How does mentor development and mentor training further your program's mission and vision? Why do we even bother? Why is it sort of a core part of the M+ enhancements? And why should we put so much energy today and in the future to doing this? How does it benefit our work? How does it benefit our matches? How does it benefit our communities? So that question is right there at the top of the stack in the Padlet. So you can type some answers in there, or you can raise your hand or unmute to join a conversation in the real life, whichever one works better for you. Yvonne, I feel sad that everyone's anonymous. I don't know if there's anything we can do about that, but maybe we can think about it for next time. Feels very illicit. Maybe I should try to be excited about that. I'm not sure. So in the Padlet, for folks who can't join the Padlet because maybe they're joining us from their phone or whatever, we see people saying that helps in screening and matching, helps with the continuous improvement and development. It keeps people engaged because it continues the learning and growing of the mentor mindset. So the same way we, when we even talk about positive youth development and youth development, we think about sort of ongoing growth, goals, training, development. We expect that of our mentors too. Ensures that we have skilled mentors. Supports the mission of being youth-centered because we continue to sort of focus on youth and youth thoughts and needs. Lends support to mentors, helps them feel more confident in handling whatever's in front of them. We're able to develop people in a caring and understanding way into our mission and vision, provide ongoing support and development opportunities, which translates to more impactful matches. Make sure mentors are reminded of our mission and vision, information and assistance. This is great. So people, you are welcome to keep on going in the Padlet. Does anyone want to unmute and use a different voice so I can stop talking for a moment? Madeline,
Yeah.
what are you thinking?
Oh gosh. Now I have to look back because I was waiting to see when you were going to be done talking. Okay. As I was waiting to see when to time myself. I think one important thing is relevancy, like staying relevant. As if we have mentor mentee pairs that move on, you've got to know what's changing. You've got to know the lingo, things like that, to not only connect but also know like if they're talking about something that's not great.
I think you cut out. Maybe you even just completely disappeared.
Am I gone?
There you are again. Okay.
I think that was about it.
Okay, great. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, absolutely. It helps people stay connected and relevant and learning. And we know, I'm going to move on to the next slide, but again, keep it on in there if you want. We have added this requirement for ongoing mentor training and actually added all of the enhancements to the M+ program because they're proven to improve match outcomes. That's why we do it. It's that we have designed the M+ program around evidence-based enhancements that improve outcomes for matches. What I think, and I see people touching on all of those in the context of the match relationship specifically and how ongoing mentor training improves the match and the strength of the match and the relationship between the match and the program. What we haven't covered, and I want to make sure we remember, is that all of our mentors are members of our communities. And so anytime we are working with our mentors and doing mentor development, that means that our broader reach into our community of folks who understand youth's lives, understand positive youth development, understand strength-based programming, understand trauma, understand class, whatever it is that we're doing our ongoing training in, That is more and more members of our community who are capable and literate and communicative around those issues. And that has huge ripple effects well above and beyond just our individual programs and the work that we do. So, as you all know, all mentors should complete 2 trainings per year for at least 4 total hours of training. And positive youth development needs to happen in that first year. Ongoing training can either be in person or in the community or online. And what we're going to talk about today is how flexible we can think of that. That it's not just something like this experience that we're all having with each other right now, that we can think about training and mentor development much more flexibly. So we have 2 online training courses. We have Mentor Social Connector and Partners as Parents as Partners in Mentoring that you're welcome to use. You can use our full strength-based approaches to mentoring toolkit, which is on our website. And you can use, and we have a bunch of additional modules, and we're developing more. So next year, you are welcome to come back and talk about more of them, and I'll ask you a little bit to inform that work. A lot of what we're doing today in this conversation, and Benita's dropping those links, is hearing from you about what does and doesn't work for mentor training so that we can make sure that we're developing tools that will actually serve you all and your programs well. Also, those of you who are on a learning exchange, those trainings absolutely also count as long as you document in the IMS and include the completion notification. And again, you don't have to use online trainings if they don't work well for your mentors. Ongoing training opportunities can be used as ways for programs to respond to current events or adjust challenges that come up during monthly check-ins. Race is always a deeply current and important issue to talk about, but we can also talk about class. We can talk about how to communicate across divides. That would be a very relevant time during election season to talk to people about that. Health, the use of deficit-based languages, learning more about mental health, the way we just did with hiding in plain sight. People watching a movie and then having a conversation about it, that counts as a training. So we're going to dive deep today into a full range of training and development options. We're going to talk about webinars and TikToks and sitting on a mentor's porch. I know that as much of a stereotype as it feels like, I know that the team in West Virginia who are in the last cohort actually spend a lot of time sitting on people's porches doing ongoing mentor training there. And that is absolutely a way to both develop relationships and develop people's skill set. So we are doing this conversation today, but it doesn't stop there. So if you would like training or support around ongoing development and ongoing training, please reach out. We're happy to support you. And so again, we've dropped those 2 resources into the chat. So unfortunately, because of the way the universe works and the way funding from all of the funders that we all have and all of our nonprofits all work, it's great when you do it, but it's even better when you document that you did it. And we need you to document that folks are demonstrating their knowledge. So you all know that, like you've all worked under a nonprofit before, you've all like used some sort of spreadsheet before or our IMS before. But that's not the only reason we demonstrate knowledge. The other reason that we demonstrate knowledge about each learning opportunity, whether that's done as a batch or individually, whether that's done as a group or one-on-one, is because when we are asked to reflect on our learning, it cements that learning deeper in our body. We learn better, we learn more when we have had to reflect on that learning immediately afterwards or a little while afterwards. That's when the learning really like starts to sit in our bodies and when we get to practice it. And so when we're thinking about that, when we do a training or share an article or however we're asking our programs to learn, asking a question afterwards about what will you take with you, or asking people to practice scenarios, or having a conversation with match support staff or a quiz. All of those are tools to have people reflect on that learning enough that they can apply it to other aspects of their life, and that helps them learn, as well as helping you put something in the IMS, which we really, really need you to put in the IMS. Thank you very much. So both actually important and relevant for real life and doing our jobs better, and important and relevant for real life because it helps us move all the money from the feds to you all. So next question, trying out the Padlet again. What works for you to document learning, or what doesn't work? And I don't mean like we don't need to have complaints about the IMS. We all know it's annoying. What I want to hear from you today is, how do you check to see if people learned anything? Do you use quizzes? Do you just use reflective conversations? Do you have people practice scenarios? When you do training, how do you actually know whether or not someone paid attention and learned? Do you use a parallel process Padlet to see if people are paying attention and learning? Who knows? What do you do? So I see folks writing reflective conversations, evaluations, open-ended feedback questions. What else do people do? Do you know what I really, really don't like? When I'm doing a webinar and after like 4 slides, I then have to do a quiz that's just a repeat of what happened in the last 4 slides. And I find myself like really resenting the person who designed that thing. And then sometimes it's something I don't really want to do that I need to know how to do. And I realize that that quiz is like the only reason I'm paying any attention at all. And it actually works really, really well. And so that's another piece. Like, how are you designing these tools so that they're really like sort of meeting people where they are? Like, is it a training where people are going to sort of like not pay all that much attention and maybe the quiz will help them? Or is it somewhere where someone's going to stay really deeply engaged and like a rich conversation is what draws out the learning? I see more people saying through conversations with mentors. Does anyone want to unmute and jump in on this one? Open dialogue, role playing. I love role playing. More reflective conversations. Asking people to connect it to their match or their mentee. Can I ask one person to jump in and unmute and answer this question? Talk a little bit about how they know about learning. Joy or Yvonne or Leslie, will one of you jump in so there can be a different voice in the room for a minute? Reflect on how you like to do this.
I can share something that worked really well at the agency where I was previously. One thing, so I come from a big brothers, big sisters. So of course we already had kind of that embedded match support. And what we would do is we would bring tidbits of learning into each of our match support contacts. So it was really just a small piece of education that would allow for our staff to build upon conversations and kind of get a sense of where people were in their learning. So maybe getting a better understanding of what would apply to them and to their match, or things that they might want to learn more about. And then we could follow up and share resources or find some commonalities in what some of our mentors were looking for as far as educations to support their mentee. And I felt like that allowed us to create stronger trainings that mentors wanted to be at. So that was helpful. And then again, just knowing that people are super busy, having that quick tidbit of education and the conversation that they already know that they have to talk to us once a month was really a helpful way to break down trainings. And the demonstration of knowledge was of course shown through that rapport that we were having in the conversation.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I would add that I am a survey person. I am a pre and post survey person. I love to know what folks knew in advance, and if they learned something different throughout. I'm also a fan of an action, of asking people to take an action. Like, here's what I'm going to.
Oh, Joy, you just cut out. No hearing. Do not hear you. Okay.
I'll jump in real quick and
Okay.
add my 2 cents. And specifically bringing up, elevating one of the comments in the Padlet that says, making them, the mentors, take the quizzes seems like too much. Almost like it's a full-time job for them and we shouldn't put that much pressure on them like that. It could backfire. Talk about being responsive to your mentors. It is really, really important that if we are asking mentors to give a lot, not just in terms of survey and time for ongoing development, but we're asking them to build a healthy relationship with a young person in their community. Anytime we're asking something of them, it is important that we're asking ourselves, is this responsive? Are we likely to be putting too much strain in this volunteer role that they're having? And I think that being aware that it could backfire is important. And we should really also see that feedback opportunities, whether it's a survey or a conversation, is really a moment for us to get information on how are we doing as folks that are providing ongoing development, not just our mentors absorbing new information that they could use in their relationship, is how are we delivering this information? And that's a very important way of analyzing feedback forms, because there's a lot of research that shows that good and effective support of mentors is usually the backbone of the outcomes in that mentoring relationship, in the match. And so if we're providing good ongoing development, good skills development, then we can also be somewhat confident that that match itself is going to have the tools that it needs to get through those difficult situations that come up in relationships, or awkward conversation that come up in mentoring relationships. We can figure that out if we're doing that through the surveys. So being able to find that sweet spot is important, and really seeing like, how do we take this feedback to hold ourselves accountable if we're doing what we're supposed to be doing?
Thanks. So I'm going to move on to our next slide, which is, we know we need to do it. We know we need to know that people have done it. They've paid attention, that people are learning. We need to document that. But what do we mean by training? And I want to just sort of like, well, I want to say beat a dead horse, but I don't think I'm supposed to say that. And I can't come up with another idiom. So now I'm stuck with my sentences here. But what I want to do is broaden the context of this enhancement from mentor training to mentor development. Because in practice, it's clear that our mentors are learning and developing throughout the year through match support conversations, through experiences with their mentees and their mentees' families. We set the tone for growth and development at the start of the relationship, specifically with the match, but also for all of those involved. We've heard some great strategies for fostering this, and I want to capture all of it in our data. So again, remember to document in case notes in an IMS. And the content that we're talking about might be new information and skills. It might be refreshers from the pre-match training. It might be conversations with other mentors. Ongoing training is optimal within the 3 to 8 month points in the relationship. And I think you all know this already. I think you know it intuitively. The initial navigating around the relationship's been accomplished, and mentors in our place where they have questions or are just ready to deepen the relationship. And, you know, the last few months, as I've done more program visits with you all, one thing that always strikes me when I interview mentors is that none of them ever remember anything that happened before they were matched. Like they all know they had pre-match training. They all know that there were some words connected to it, but like, you know, that learning when you don't have the place to really put it, it like flows out a little bit. And so this ongoing training, because it has a place to connect to the match, the life of the relationship between the mentor, the mentee, and the family, is an incredibly poignant time to be training. Regular training should keep on going from there. So mentors can, again, stay connected to the organization, like you said, reflect on their practice, and continue to evolve their thinking and then continue to grow their communities. The Mentoring Plus program sits in Youth Collab's Building Communities focus area because we truly believe that that core relationship between the mentor, the mentee, and the family is the path to building strong communities that support youth. Learning can happen anywhere. It can be in person, it can be online, it can be on the phone, it can be out and about in the community. And we do it because it's well documented to foster quality match relationships, which we see in the data on match closeness and duration. But again, there are ripple effects in our communities when we do this. So who can be at the trainings? Who should be trained? Who should be part of development? Mentors, but also parents and youth and caregivers. The whole three-legged stool. Refreshers, especially around positive youth development, around boundaries, around communication, around youth development, transfer skills and knowledge, peer sharing, when mentors are talking to other mentors, when parents and caregivers are talking to other caregivers, when youth are talking to other youth. I've heard some amazing stories from all of you about what happens when youth are connecting with each other. Again, in that sort of 3 to 8 month range is when we really want to start diving in on this. They can be anywhere, especially on porches or stoops, corner stores. And they can happen any way, any possible way. So I know that a lot of you have a specific order that you do this in that's fairly structured. And I know that some others of you are much more responsive in your training. When something comes up, you send a link and you talk about it, and there's not something that sort of goes across your whole agency or across a standard mentor timeline. So what are some of the training topics that you all like to cover in that 3 to 8 month range that you know that you want to have as part of learning that takes place once matches are developed? So again, over in the Padlet, with your voices, jump on in on this one.
I've also found that it has been helpful. Can you all hear me? Just give me a thumbs up if you can. That it can be helpful to go over the life cycle of a match in that 3 to 8 month period. So people have an idea of what to expect beyond. Everybody's really excited, or hopefully people are excited at the start. But as that excitement begins to wane, what can you expect? And what is normal in terms of youth development, especially when you're working with older youth? And what are some of the ways and resources that are available to them if they come into challenges? Who are other people that they can talk to? So being sure that mentors know that they are supported in the process, and that families know also that they are supported in the process and they know who to talk to. Everybody knows who they can reach out to for support as things go from new and fresh and exciting to kind of mundane and everyday. What's to be expected, and what's to be expected specifically for the young person that's being centered in that particular match?
Thank you, Joy. So in the Padlet, I see folks making sure that in those 3 to 8 month range that they're talking about the vision of the organization and the timeline of events that might happen, setting match goals and youth outcome goals, setting boundaries, what to expect from the mentee in the organization over the timeline of the match. Again, safety and setting boundaries. What else happens in that 3 to 8 month window where the relationship really starts to deepen?
This is also, go for it, Yvonne.
Just a quick reaction to the things that are coming up in the Padlet. I would encourage us, I would challenge us to think of what are the specific skills that you are embedding into the way mentors set boundaries, or what are the specific skills and strategies, approaches that mentors are using to meet the kids where they're at, or the mentees where they're at. Setting goals. What are the specific, again, the specific strategies that you're giving mentors? So for setting match goals, are you using a SMART approach, the acronym SMART? And are you coaching mentors for how to develop SMART goals so that they can do that with them? Or thinking about youth outcome goals. What does it mean to create trauma responsive and support culturally affirming outcomes when we're thinking of goals? So challenge based on what's coming up on here, like for your organization, for your individual mentoring community, what are the specific skills? Reflective listening, SMART goals. That is often going to make trainings a little bit easier to introduce as we're describing them with mentors. Like this is a specific thing you're likely to walk out with. And also they're making them concrete can also make it happen to just share during the training itself. So just, yeah, challenge to think, what are the top 3 skills that you're including in these trainings with your mentoring community?
I really appreciate that, Yvonne. So again, there's sort of like the specific task that's being learned, and then there's also all of the ways of thinking and the skills that you're embedding in those specific tools. Really thinking about things on multiple levels. And I see someone talked about child development and age groups and age ranges. Okay, so we know that we can train people anywhere. We know we should be working with people to develop everywhere, that we're talking about not just mentors, but also families and youth being included in these, that we can do this very formally and we can also do it very informally. But in however we do it, we want to make sure that we are thinking about how people actually learn. So I'm going to turn it back over to Joy for that.
Heads up, it's pretty loud over here on my end.
Oh, it really is. Would you like me to keep on going? I think I will. Great. So, Joy, if it ever stops being loud on your end, please feel free to come back from whatever is happening there. So, ways people learn. I've heard from so many mentors about how opportunities to connect with other mentors and to sort of process what they're experiencing with a trained, skilled mentor development match support specialist is like just pure sparkles and opportunity for them. We also know that reading a brief article or a discussion of the relevant content is huge. Formal training is huge, as is just listening, observing, and reflecting. So people learn in a lot of ways. We think a lot about formal training, but we want to think more about development, learning through conversations, those focused on a specific topic with a purposeful intention, such as addressing a challenging situation. Sometimes the learning comes just in the reflection required to explain the situation at hand. That often happens to me. Learning from reading information is deepened when there's an opportunity to respond to the information, either through writing or discussion. that is why we try for a lot of interaction built into our online trainings, as slightly awkward as it might feel for everyone sometimes. It's important to remember too that learning does not always require someone to talk or read. Listening, observing, and reflecting all brings us insights. Conversations with other mentors, reading, like I said, training, and then listening, observing, and reflecting from youth and from parents. And opportunities to listen and observe and reflect from youth and parents is something that we can, I think, all dive much deeper into in our practices.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Emily. It's calmed down a little bit over here.
Cool.
I wanted to add to the conversation that there was a piece around what should happen in that 3 to 8 month time. And it's also an opportunity for us to learn how the people that we're working with learn. So you begin to know your mentors a little bit and what sticks for them and the ways that they receive information. And that's an opportunity for the case managers, for the staff that are working with mentors, to figure out the things that are sticking that can inform the way forward. And to Emily's point, it is so true that people learn in different ways, right? So they don't necessarily have to be the center of the conversation to get something from it. And I'm curious, and I'd love to hear from you all, what are some of the ways that you found success when you think back over this last year? And it could have been pre-match training, any type of training that felt impactful, where you felt like afterwards people walked away, changed, or had some new bit of information. What type of training was it? What was happening? Was it something that you sent out to people that they responded to? Was it a conversation? I know some of you do mentor meetups where mentors can get together and maybe after work during like a happy hour time. I'd love to hear from you in the chat or come off mute. What are the events and materials and platforms that have been most impactful in connecting with your mentors?
Joy, for me, we do a lot of training and development with programs, not with mentors, but the film Hiding in Plain Sight for me was felt like an incredibly successful opportunity at training and development, and very different than the way we've usually been doing our work. So that one's really sticking with me, especially the panel with the youth on.
Yeah, I love that. And that's actually one of the questions on the Padlet that would be great I would love to hear back from people, is how do you integrate youth voice and family voice and mentor voices in your training? I think that I agree, Emily, that the spaces that I've been in that have felt impactful, like there was change was going to happen and people were going to really shift the way they were in community with people, came from a genuine interest of wanting to know how to connect. So for instance, the pandemic, right? The pandemic was coupled with increased visibility around racial violence. And what we know in the mentoring field is that there's a lot of cultural difference in mentoring, and that the majority of the mentors in the mentoring field and the majority of the families and mentees in the mentoring fields have different identities, whether that's socioeconomic realities, racial identities. There's usually a difference. And in the mentoring field, we saw people coming together trying to figure out, how can I be better? How can I be more effective? How can I be a stronger mentor? How can we be stronger programs in these times? And so there was an increase of desire for mentoring programs and mentors to know and learn about what was happening. And there was a lot of good training and a lot of good work that came out during these last couple of years, and a larger receptivity for cultural humility, right? And understanding our positionality and how we relate and how others relate to us and how that impacts, especially the mentoring relationship. And a lot of those conversations, in order for them to actually be culturally humble, have to include the voices of youth and families and people with diverse identities. So I'm curious from you all, if you could add in the Padlet, how do you integrate youth voice and family voices and mentor voices into your training now, or how would you like to? What are some ways that you could consider tweaking some methods, or what are some more things that you would like to do to include more voices in your training. As you all think about that, one of the other things that we have to consider when we are doing these trainings is what the learner's needs are. And there are some learners' needs that have been identified that we will just spend a little bit of time on. And the first one is respect. I think this is true at all ages, not just for adults, that people need to feel like they are the subject of their own learning, and that they need to be free to decide what to learn, which is one of the reasons why we always celebrate when we see that there's kind of like a bank of options for mentors to choose from in their training, or different types of things for people to choose in that bank. They also like to be a part of the planning, maybe even select, like, hey, this is a training that I think would be good, and I found this, and can you share it out? And I'd like to introduce it, because we have a lot of wisdom and awareness and knowledge among the mentors that we work with as well. There also needs to be a sense of immediacy, like, how will this help me today? How will this help me with a current thing that I'm working through with my mentee, with the thing that I'm working through in order to be the best mentor that I can be? It needs to be applicable, right? And right now. They do not want, right? The thing that is most valuable in this season is time. So it needs to feel like it's a good use of folks' time. There needs to also be some engagement. Like we were asking today, we're asking you to come off mute. We're asking you to add some thoughts into the Padlet. We want to hear from you. It's important. We know that it's important for you all to hear from each other too, that we are not the sole experts on this, and we are not the experts in this. We're just some folks who know a little bit, but that you all know some things too. So we want to be sure that there's an opportunity to engage. And again, it needs to be relevant and applicable. They can apply it beyond mentoring. And one of the things that I'm loving right now in the mentoring role that I'm seeing is kind of this increase of focus on self-awareness, that I think that we're moving away from kind of the respectability politics of mentoring, which is here's a way that you should act so that you can have success in the world to this young person, instead of what can we do as folks who are walking alongside youth on their journey, what can we do to be safe spaces, to co-create the world that our youth deserve, right? And so we have to be just kind of mindful of who we are and aware and willingness. And so one of the simple ways you could do that is an Enneagram. So it's not a long training, but it's like, here's discover something about myself that may help me relate to somebody else. My mentor happens to be one of those people. So how is it useful to them outside of the mentoring space? And what kind of safety? People want to feel welcome. They want to feel comfortable during a learning experience and know that they won't be judged about what they don't know. So we always want to recognize and affirm people for what they do, what they are doing well, for their willingness to show up, and all of those things. So I know that these are things that you all are considering often, and I would love to, so we can share that with you. When you say the name of the tool that we're using today, or the Enneagram, I can share that with you absolutely afterwards in our follow-up materials. And there's a couple of good ones out there. I happen to be a fan of those, whether it is which Hogwarts house are you in, or it is an Enneagram or a personality type of test. It's just a way for us to share a little bit about who we are and know about ourselves, and maybe do it with the mentee. It'd be fun. Absolutely. So just a couple of tips on learning is, how do we integrate different learning styles and different learning approaches? I can confess that I am not a TikTok user. I have much respect for folks who know how to get in there and do the thing and post it and all of that. But I learn from them. I just can't create them without a little bit of help. But there are different ways and different approaches. And I think it'd be helpful, the more approaches that we consider, the amount of time that people have and what is popular right now. Where are the places that people are already going that we can go to for these things. We always want to address the real world application. Like, how is somebody going to use this in their current match? How are we going to use this in our program? And drawing the experiences of those in the room is really helpful if you have the opportunity to do the in-person trainings and have a plan for intentional follow-up. And that's, again, the conversation. So even if you're sending out a clip, you're sending out a TED Talk, you're sending out some TikTok videos, you're recording a 30-second live about something, that you're following up, that there is a loop where you're bringing it back up. And that could be the assessment, when you follow up and you let people know that, hey, I'm remembering this is important to me. And they know when they talk to you, hey, such and such is going to ask me about this thing and what I thought about it. So before I hop on this call with the program, I'm going to be sure I looked at those lists of resources and I checked in, because I know they're going to want to know how I'm using this information with my mentor, with the family. They're going to check in on it. Malcolm Knowles says, primarily the differences is to relate to an adult, that the learner has to be self-directing. And again, I would say that this is not just for adults, that all of us want agency and choices. So what can we do to provide inclusive and a wide swath of choices for people to continue to learn and grow, so that we could be good stewards of co-creating the communities that our youth deserve. And I'm going to pass it to Emily for the next portion.
Thanks, Joy. So how do you all actually do this in the real world? Mentors can learn from each other. You can learn from each other. You can learn from mentors and pass on what you learn from mentors to other mentors, to families, to communities. We learn from experts, send out articles, become trained in training of trainers, and then train other trainers. We share TED Talks. But what if we kept on thinking about this as learning and not training? And that we did it in a way that partnered with matches and families to learn what they need and what they know. And so thinking a lot about how, when someone in your agency hears about a need or a curiosity from a match or a family about what they need and what they know, that it's documented in the agency so that you can continue to sort of share with each other what is needed. That you build on that knowledge to build out a calendar of themes for each month that everyone that's doing match support provides. And that at that same point, you note what comes up, and that gets then reshared in your agency. So you have a culture of sort of continuous learning and improvement based on just these conversations about what people know and what people need. That you use collective resources so you can share documents across your agency to continue to document what people know and what they need and how you're sharing it. And that in doing that, you're learning from each other by bringing mentors together, by bringing families together, and by bringing yourselves together to, again, like, it's not everyone at their desk in isolation. It's not just something that happens at staff meetings, but that you're continually documenting what are the curiosities, what are the strengths, and how can we all integrate them into sort of an automatic process in our programs to make this work. So a big part of that is asking, who does your training? And who do people listen to? And what voice is most impactful? So right now, it's the Youth Collab staff that are doing this training with you all. But we know that if we had had a panel of youth leaders here to talk to you about this, probably it would resonate a little deeper. That's something that we should be doing more often as a Youth Collab team than we do for you all. I have talked to a lot of mentors in the field who, when other mentors joined their trainings, that's what they remembered, was the opportunity to learn from other mentors, not to learn from program staff. So I would really ask you to take a minute to think deeply. Joy already, brought up this question. I noticed that it's blank in the Padlet. It feels like a really hard thing to do some days. It feels like another thing to ask of your mentors, another thing to ask of your youth. It makes calendars really complicated. But really, how are you integrating youth voice and family voice and mentor voices into your training and development? Because those are the most impactful voices that you can use, because they're sharing what they know in order to improve practice. You can put together a council of trainers. I promise you that any mentor or family or youth is going to feel really honored that you want them to tell other people what they know and what they do. It's a real form of mentor or family or youth appreciation to do that. It helps people feel appreciated, that you trust their knowledge. So if you have one sort of takeaway, I noticed that the Padlet on that question is blank. Take this question back to your team and ask yourselves this about how you can do that. And again, I know that a lot of people aren't doing formal trainings. So how do you integrate those voices into your informal trainings? And that's something that we're gonna be working on doing a lot more at Youth Collab with resources that we share with you. And so taking a step further, how are you doing this? How are you systematizing it? How does this not just feel like another thing in the overwhelming pile of things to do? What does it mean to be developing that ongoing learning community? So I know that some of you have calendars of trainings. I'm curious about other ways folks have been able to sort of systematize mentor development in your agencies. Do you have those shared documents where it's like all the coolest TED Talks in one big Google Doc that people can add to? Do you have a theme each month? Mental Health Month and Tobacco Awareness Month and Hispanic Heritage Month, which I think is where we are right now. And I'm going to stop listing the months. How are folks able to use those things in order to sort of take some of the guesswork off of this each month to really start to systematize how you become a learning community? So one important way to do that is mentor development. And mentor development is recognizing the learning when it happens, right? Is creating those spaces for reflection and application, and then documenting them for yourselves and internally. So it's not just something that happens between match support and the mentor, but something that can be reflected back into your agency as a learning community. I think we often do this in terms of like red flags, you know, folks have staff meetings and they say, what problems are our matches having right now, or what are people struggling with? But it can also be, what are people learning right now? Like, what are people ready to learn right now? What is sort of poignant in our communities that we're ready to be thinking about right now, and that I find myself talking to people about? And when I'm doing that, when I'm learning that, again, how do I identify and track those trends and needs with my mentors, so that when we learn something sort of between me and the colleague next to me, that we are sharing it out to our whole agency so that everyone can learn from it, and that we can build it into those calendars. And when we see that happening, how do we celebrate those new opportunities with our mentors? So we have a few things in the Padlet. Going to give folks a moment to dive into those. And then I'm going to hand the mic back to Joy.
Thanks, Emily. Yes, as you all are continuing to add those things to the Padlet and think on some of the things that Emily has mentioned, we just want to kind of lift up some of the things that we've talked about. It's termed here other learning experiences, but it's not really other, it's all training. Community training events that they can be couched in fun. It doesn't have to be come and bring your notebook to learn the thing. It could be a gathering. You make an announcement, you share a video, and you talk about it. You know, this just have topics to discuss. There could be social events that you have for mentors. I know that some of you, again, do the mentor meetups or learning opportunities. Some people have gone as far to have partnerships with restaurants where they do that monthly and people gather. Other folks will pull people together based on current events to discuss topics that are things that are going on, and to provide mentors with language for discussing some of the things that are in the headlines these days. Sharing on websites, articles, videos, things to discuss during match support. So just know that there are a lot of resources available to you, that it does not have to be a actual training that in a formalized approach. One of the things too, I'm really excited about, Emily hinted at, and we're excited to be working on, is some additional training content that centers positive youth development, and also centers some of the things that are really important to us as we think about the differences that are occurring in amongst identities and people in these mentoring relationships. Is how do we build bridges, and how do we connect utilizing strength-based language and trauma-informed approaches and cultural humility. So we're working on some exciting resources that will be available to you for some of that plug and play, but know that you don't have to recreate the wheel, that there are a lot of resources that are available to you outside of just Youth Collaboratory. There are some here that we can share in the chat as well, a toolkit here that is available that Emily mentioned to you, but know that there are some new pieces that will be coming out next year that will also be available to you. All right, and we can go ahead and move into next steps.
So oh, no, I am unmuted. I would love, this is a lot of questions that we sort of throw at you on the Padlet. You're gonna have access to the Padlet as long as you need it. And so ask you to go in there and look at some of those questions and think about making a training plan. I know a lot of you have them already. And I know a lot of those training plans are, this is the training that we'll host in person or Zoom or whatever. And I'm asking you, what happens when you sort of release yourself from that aspect of the training plan, or you think of that as an accessory of the training plan, that you name what your TA themes of the month are and how you're going to identify those TA themes of the month, that you think about how you might host a mentor conversation that maybe you have a youth at. Maybe it's hosted by a youth, that mentor conversation. What supporting materials you can send out regularly. I know a lot of you are doing that. And then how can you talk to youth and families to really have your youth leaders in your organization be owning a lot of this development? You can keep a running list of those resources. You can ask mentors and families to take a lead on this. And a lot of this work can be sort of supplements and sneak attacks, and really just like every moment is a learning opportunity, and every moment is an opportunity to build into your training plan. So name for yourself explicitly as an agency how you would like to integrate this into your ongoing development beyond the formal training rooms.
Thank you for that, Emily. I think that the piece that I would add too is to be thinking about what can Youth Collab, how can Youth Collab be helpful to you as you all are thinking about these things? I can't stress it enough how helpful it was to me as a program that received TA from Youth Collab, that I had access to people from around the country. if there are conversations that you would like for us to have or to center, organizations that you would like to connect with, or tools and resources that we can be helpful in, maybe we have access to them and you don't, or you have access to them and you'd like to lift it up. Whatever it is, know that we are your partners in this work, and we want to continue to help in the advancement of the youth services field and the mentoring field. And so please let us know, as you all are thinking about these things, how we can be helpful partners as well.
I would love to further echo that, Joy. So is it that, you would love just sort of like a list of TED Talks, or is it that you can find lots of 5-hour trainings on this topic, but you really need a 20-minute training on this topic? Or is it that you want to gather in a room with folks, or you know that you have youth that are interested in training, but you're not sure how to sort of take the next step with them, and you'd like some youth who do know a lot about training to talk to your youth who haven't maybe trained before, whatever it is. But really, like, reach out and let us know what those resources are, because we are here because we want to be helpful. We want to develop the resources that will serve you and your organization best. And we're pretty actively engaged right now in rewriting a lot of our supplemental materials.
Thank you, Emily, and thank you all for being here today, for all the work that you continue to do in your communities, with your communities and alongside them. Some important dates to remember is that the final quarterly reports are due December 31st, and we will send out a template with the materials that we send out after this. That will also include the link to some Enneagram tests and other fun personality tests for you to consider to share with folks. Also, there will be a TA Thursday and the TA Thursday and partner meeting will be combined for December. So instead of doing both, we're going to do one. So it's going to be a partner meeting with a TA Thursday feel, and that will be December 13th. Registration is live on the site. You can go ahead and register there. Again, we do ask that you have at least 2 folks from each of the sites here, and the more the merrier. If there are new program staff or people that need to be here who aren't normally here, feel free to share the sign-in page or the registration page with them so that they can attend as well. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. Our team has expanded. We're really excited about the increased capacity that we will have to work closely with you all. So please reach out as always, if you have any questions, ideas, or want some thought partnership as we're working on the ongoing mentor training or any other mentoring related things. And finally, we would love for you all to be sure to complete the evaluation before you head out today. And we'll put that in the chat. Oh, thank you. Awesome, Benita. And finally, any questions, any lingering questions from today before we prepare to head out? Okay. Well, if they come up, please feel free to reach out to us. It was so good to be with you all today. Thanks for hanging out, for taking part in the Padlet, and for sharing your ideas. And again, for all the work that you all are doing. We are happy to be in partnership with you, and we look forward to our next gathering in December. Take good care, and we'll see you soon.